2008 Goddess Final Witness by Ronald Weinland. The prophesied end time reveals the demise of the United States and the beginning of man's final war. Chapter Contents. Chapter 1 Goddess 2 Witnesses. Chapter 2 The Deception in Man. Chapter 3 Time has run out for man. Chapter 4 The Seventh Wonders of the Sixth Seal. Chapter 5 The Final 3.5 years. Chapter 6 Why such massive destruction? Chapter 7 The Mystery of God revealed. Chapter 1 Goddess 2 Witnesses. It is with apprehension and heaviness of heart that I begin to write a second book. My first book, The Prophesied End Time, was published nearly a year and a half ago, and has been distributed in over 100 countries. It describes the prophetic end-time destruction that is about to come on this earth. It foretells of World War III, and the overthrow of the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and much of Western Europe. Some of these events, as well as other prophesied conflicts, will now be covered in more detail, although these are not the primary focus of this book. There are many fictional books and movies about apocalyptic events that result in massive destruction on Earth. The source of such destruction is generally portrayed as man-made, the result of natural disasters, or sometimes the result of invasion from beyond this Earth. This non-fiction book reveals a combination of all three sources, ending in massive destruction of most of this Earth, including most of its population. This is not easy to write. It will not be easy to read. You may not read past the first few pages before you decide that this is too outrageous to continue. Nevertheless, it is all true, and you owe it to yourself and those you love to fully consider what is written here. Goddess 2 Witnesses interviews. The publicist of my first book scheduled interviews for me throughout the United States. Those interviews began in September 2004. I mention this because there was an underlying theme that ran throughout those interviews which will help you to better understand the need for this second book. Final end time events that will lead into the Great Tribulation at the opening of the seventh seal have already begun. These were covered in the prophesied end time, as well as the interviews. Understandably, it was difficult for the hosts of those interviews to believe that this world is about to enter a time of destruction which will ultimately end 6,000 years of man's government, man's self-rule. One of the most common questions or sentiment was, why should anyone believe you over so many others who, throughout time, have made predictions about the end time, or the end of this world? The answer is twofold, and was partially addressed in the first book. Before the first answer is given, it should be noted that toward the end of the interviews, one phase of end-time events was well underway. Many of those interviews can be heard on a website, to be given later in this chapter. In December of 2004, a great tsunami, originating in the Indian Ocean, struck several countries with massive destruction, and a death toll that has been estimated at well over 225,000. The UN estimated the number of people displaced by the tsunami to be 5 million. This tsunami, caused by an earthquake, is the second strongest in recorded history. It has been followed by an escalation in the number and magnitude of earthquakes worldwide. The United States witnessed a record-breaking year for hurricanes both in number and magnitude. 2005 had the most named tropical storms on record. Letters of the Greek alphabet have never been used to name storms, but even now in December, Hurricane Epsilon has become the fifth named storm in the Greek alphabet. This past year witnessed the highest number of hurricanes on record along with the most Category 5 storms ever. In August, Hurricane Katrina produced the greatest destruction from a natural disaster ever seen in the United States, which left some areas of New Orleans almost wiped out. This devastation is so great that there is not enough time to rebuild it before this age of man comes to an end. From another perspective, the average number of named storms in any season is 10. But in 2005 there were 26. The average number of hurricanes is 6, but 2005 had 14. The average number of major hurricanes is 2, but 2005 had 7. Then, in October, a massive earthquake struck northern Pakistan with collateral destruction extending into India. As a result, over 80,000 people lost their lives and approximately 2.5 million were left homeless. But before these disasters occurred, Many of the interview hosts question the validity of what was written in the prophesied end time. In those interviews, they were told that such events would begin to occur and continue to increase in magnitude over the following 4 years. But the question was asked, haven't there always been earthquakes and other destructive forces that have claimed large numbers of lives? The answer is yes, but the whole point of this is the answer to the question, why should anyone believe all this? These events are occurring exactly as these books describe. Yes, through time, natural disasters have resulted in great destruction and loss of life. The difference is that now, we are at the beginning of the final events which will culminate in the end. God is two witnesses of this age, the end of man's self-rule on earth. The proof of the validity of my first book, and now this one, is in the timing, and the destruction that follows, exactly as both books describe. God gives the analogy of a woman in labor pain to show how these events will unfold. As labor begins, the contractions are farther apart and less intense, but as time between contractions decreases, the intensity of those contractions grows. Such is the reality of labor pain, and such will be part of the proof of what is written here. What we have witnessed since those interviews a year ago will only increase in magnitude and frequency until we come to the last and final stage. This final stage is referred to as the Great Tribulation, which is prophesied to last for a final 3.5 years. It will begin with 1/3 of the United States being destroyed, followed by World War III. So what makes what I have to say in these two books any different from what others have had to say about the end time? You need to ask, who else has laid everything on the line, and in such detail, as found in these two books? Over the centuries, people have seen natural disasters and predicted that man was in the end times of Bible prophecy. But throughout time, they have been wrong. The Bible has much to say about such times, therefore, it has been a natural consequence that these religious people have made such predictions. The difference is that now it is true. We have now entered the end times. Today, people are making the same kind of claims as others have done for centuries, but this time they just happen to be right that this is the end. Due to the magnitude of the disastrous events that have occurred over the past year, there has been a marked increase in popularity and interest in end-time predictions, and the growing willingness of religious types to make more pronouncements. But all of them are wrong in their conclusions, except for one coincidental truth: this is the end time. Such prognosticators will only increase as disastrous events increase, and they will deceive many people. It is easy to jump on the bandwagon, an American expression used to describe the behavior of conformists and opportunists. As disastrous events increase, they will claim that each event is some kind of sign, or that it has special religious significance after the event has already occurred. But who is presenting a time frame and getting more specific as all this increases? Who is putting all this together so that people can understand what is happening, and why, while also informing people of what is coming upon the United States once the seventh seal of the Book of Revelation has been opened? An example of some obnoxious religious opportunists concerns some who have made claims that New Orleans was devastated by the hurricane because of God's punishment for her sinful ways, and yet others say it was God's punishment on the United States for occupying Iraq. Still others conclude it was a specific sign that we are entering the end times. All of these people are religious opportunists who are no different from those of ages gone by. The claim that what happened to New Orleans was a sign is closest to being true, but it is still wrong. The tragedy of New Orleans is not a specific sign, it is only part of an overall sign of a woman in labor. The devastation of New Orleans is not a biblical sign of itself, and it is not mentioned by God as a single sign of the end time. God's two witnesses, the sign of a woman in labor, involves numerous natural disasters and acts of terrorism that will continue to increase in magnitude and intensity. These are not significant individually,